Well, was that the greatest weekend of rugby ever? That's what I've heard some people say. You can have your say in the comments sections. But having not done a video yesterday, I just thought it'd be an opportunity today to look back on the quarterfinals, go through some of the things that I didn't mention in my videos, in particular about the Springboks game and about the All Blacks game as well. When I was chatting outside the Stade de France, I think I mentioned in one of them that it's always such a bit of a blur when you're setting up your camera immediately after the full-time whistle. So a few things to go through there, and then just a few other discussion points that I think have emerged from the weekend. Did Argentina over-celebrate? Is there a Northern Hemisphere versus Southern Hemisphere rivalry? All that sort of stuff. So a mixed bag today. And as always, drop a comment down below, like the video, and make sure you're subscribed as well. So first up, just on that quarterfinal, I mean, the weekend as a whole, it is one of the best weekends of rugby that I can remember. To be there in the Stade de France was a privilege. Felt incredibly lucky. Two of the best matches I've ever seen. I think the Ireland-New Zealand game was the best game I've ever seen live, without question. That was then rivaled the following night. And do you know what the most pleasing thing is? Even though there will still be Ireland fans that are absolutely gutted, French fans that are heartbroken as well, is that the quarterfinals lived up to expectation, because the way the draw was done, and I know it's ridiculous, they won't do it that way again, but the way it was done so far out meant that we had the top 4 teams in the world meeting in the quarterfinals. And it might not be fair, but that's what we had, and it lived up to expectations. And I'm just glad that it wasn't underwhelming. And even if you look at the other side of the draw, England-Fiji went down to the wire. Argentina-Wales, if you looked at the final score, you might think, oh, it wasn't that close, but that's only because Argentina scored a try late on when Wales were chasing the game. That one went down to the wire as well. 4 games that could have gone either way. And I saw Russ Petty on Twitter, who's the stats guy, a really good follow if any of you are Twitter users or X users and don't follow him. He put the stat up of the average winning margin at Rugby World Cup quarterfinals, and it was 6 points this weekend just gone, and that is the best that has ever been, or the lowest that it's ever been. So I think that's quite a good reflection of the fact that what we saw was something we have never seen before. The problem with it, of course, is I think the semi-finals this weekend, I think as much as the build-up's going to be intriguing, in particular for me from the perspective of that England-South Africa game, I think there is a good chance we see some quite one-sided semi-finals. We'll wait and see, but it looks like that's quite a possibility, and the build-up will continue this week. Let's start with the All Blacks, just in terms of a few things that I didn't mention that I wanted to, having looked back on the game. I mean, that Geordie Barrett held up try, what was it, 72, 73 minutes. The driving maul, he gets under it, holds it up, and it's a goal line dropout for the All Blacks, is just a massive, massive moment. And having spoken to some Irish voices since, that was the moment where they felt like maybe it wasn't going to be their night. If they score there, then it's a completely different outlook. The All Blacks are going to be having to chase the game late on, as Ireland had to do and weren't able to. So that was sensational. And then I think it was from that dropout that Caelan Doris, unopposed, knocked the ball on and gave the All Blacks field position. Just such a huge, huge moment. And I think I mentioned this after the game, possibly. It's all such a blur now, I can't remember if I did or not. I think that there's a lot about that game that reminds me of England against New Zealand in 2019, and how that was the semi-final, that was the match England had been preparing for years. And to me, it felt like it was personal for the All Blacks. I think I did mention this in the video in terms of what Peter O'Mahony said to Sam Cane the other year, Rico Ioane's reaction. The emotional point that I think the All Blacks got themselves to was personal. It was a hugely significant game for them, outside of the fact that it's a World Cup quarter-final and therefore it's significant anyway. It mattered to them because of the recent history between them and Ireland. And I suppose the challenge for the All Blacks is getting to that same emotional place for the semi-final, where all of a sudden they're heavy favourites rather than going in as underdogs. So that's an interesting dynamic of how it changes. In terms of the Springbok game, I can't believe I didn't mention this after the match, and it's the Cheslin Kolbe charge down. I think the fact that I didn't is just a reflection that it was one of those games that so much happened in. There were so many moments that you had to try and scramble it all and work it all out in your head. But that Cheslin Kolbe charge down was so clutch. A 1-point win against France, in France, quarter-final of the World Cup, and you look back at the game and you think that could have been the moment right there. I know it was from the touchline, but Thomas Ramos is such a good kicker that you would back him to get it from there. So just a massive moment for the Boks. And I wanted to just mention it because I thought it was just sensational. Like, you never see that. You never see a charge down conversion. To see it in that game and in that context, unreal. Let's get on to the other side of the draw, Argentina. I feared that could be a performance they produced against Wales. It was always the fear. I had comments on the video for the preview I did saying, well, given the form of the two teams, Wales should be heavily favourites. But I always suspected that Argentina had the capability of showing up, and they did. Wales left some opportunities out there, and there's been a lot of talk about the Argentinian celebrations. Emiliano Buffelli top off, twirling it round his head in the stands with the fans. We saw the pictures from the dressing room with the cameras they have in there of the celebrations continuing. I don't have an issue with it, and I've heard some people say, well, hang on, you haven't won anything yet. But I think in the context of this Argentina team, who hadn't been playing well, it's a free hit in the semi-final against New Zealand. No one will expect them to win. I've got no real problem with it. And actually, having seen the Argentina fans out here in France, I feel like culturally it's different. Like, for example, in England, there's probably much more of a feeling of you celebrate once you've won something. That was a massive mantra of the 2003 England team, of you don't celebrate if you haven't won anything. And obviously that massively helped them. But I just think culturally, maybe it's slightly different. And I think the context is important as well. If the All Blacks had been doing that, if Rico Ioane had had his top off in the stands in the Stade de France after that result, as big as it would have been, you probably would have said it's a bit too much, because the expectation now for this New Zealand team is that they can go on and win the World Cup. I don't think that's the expectation for Argentina, so therefore I think it's slightly different. But if you disagree, you can let me know. And as for England, I'm going to do a video, I think, later in the week of how can England beat South Africa. What can they do to win that game, which they are massive underdogs for? So you can let me know as well in the comments there. I think they will make life awkward for the Springboks. I think South Africa will win. I think England will make life more awkward and will make it an uglier game than many people probably expect. And what you would say from an England perspective is this is an opportunity to shut everyone up. People like me who've been quite negative on them, who've said that, all right, well, they've won all their games, but they haven't been all that convincing at all in this World Cup. And it's a chance to prove people wrong. And it's a chance to prove people wrong who are saying, well, you haven't played any of the top teams in the world, because they're playing one of the top teams in the world this coming weekend in the Stade de France in a World Cup semi-final. A repeat of the 2019 final, a repeat of the 2007 final at that same venue, the Marc Cueto, was it a try, wasn't it a try in the corner, all that sort of stuff. So I'm excited for it. I think the fact England and Springbok fans in the Stade de France, I think the atmosphere will be brilliant. I think it'll be a great occasion, but there's a lot of question marks for England to answer. But what an opportunity for that team. I'm sure they'll be using all the negativity as motivation to hopefully, from their perspective, get themselves over the line. Final thing I want to mention, I wasn't going to mention all the teams that lost at the weekend, but I did want to mention Fiji. I saw Mark Evans, who works with the Fijian Drua, the franchise over there in Super Rugby. He tweeted saying that he genuinely feels a rugby superpower has risen. And you look at what Fiji are starting to put in place with the Drua, having a genuine, viable, professional pathway for players on the islands, not having to just go overseas. That in place, Simon Rawaului, their coach, being Fijian, understanding the culture, you do feel like this hopefully is the start of something very, very special for them. They were brilliant at this World Cup, and I hope that it continues. So I'll kind of leave it there. It was a bit of a broad covering of things in the video today. There was just so much to talk about that I haven't mentioned so far on the channel that I thought this was a good way to do it. After today, it's going to be full build-up towards the semi-finals. I'll be thinking about them. We'll have team announcements, all that sort of stuff. So as always, comment down below, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next one.